So it turns out for day 2 that I didn't actually quite take enough footage to adequately explain what all happened there. So now that I'm home, I'm going to explain a little bit better what all happened day 2. Day 2, yeah, day 2. So I woke up, had breakfast, blah, 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 blah. Then the first thing we had to do was we wanted to buy shirts because they had run out of hoodies the day before, so we were afraid that PAX was going to run out of shirts. And the PAX shirt, I'm not wearing it because it's in the wash right now. So we got online for that, but that was taking too long, so my parents decided to stay in line. Well, myself and Zachary's my little brother, went to the first thing that we had lined up for the day, which happened to be this thing that the Kind of Funny guys were calling the Kind of Funny pop-up, which is kind of like a panel, but it was instead of like a full stage, it was at their booth, the Rooster Teeth booth, because they were set up at the Rooster Teeth booth because of partnering with Rooster Teeth and stuff like that. So they were doing like kind of like a panel up, but at the Rooster Teeth booth on the show floor. So me and Zach went over there because they don't have a lot of seating there, so we thought that we would head over early and go get some a good seat. Well, the Kind of Funny guys were actually just hanging around. It just so happened. So when we arrived, there were all the guys there. And the day before, I had met Greg and Kevin. And Greg, I'd just mentioned that I really enjoyed his impersonations of accents. Because I have an accent and I actually find them just hilarious. And I mentioned that. It was kind of one-off because we were being ushered out, and so I was whisked away from him shortly afterward. But I wanted to tell him the full story of how him and the guys and how they all inspired me to create my podcast. And I wanted to tell them about how Ubisoft enjoys the podcast and employees from Ubisoft. And eventually, as part of doing the podcast, I was gifted enough to get the opportunity to go to Ubisoft Montreal and to meet some people that are my biggest heroes. So I feel that at least a small part of that is thanks to Greg Miller and the Kind of Funny guys. And so I wanted to tell him that story, and he really enjoyed the story because he was just hanging around before the panel, and so I managed to talk to him, and he recognized me from the day before. And so that was a ton of fun. I was really glad that I got to talk to him. Then I talked to Nick. He was a cool guy. Just kind of said, "Hey, what's up, man?" And we had the same name, so that was cool. And then I talked to Tim, which is where I got the photo. And he is just so nice. I told him the story too, and he just loved the story, and he's such a cool guy. And I was actually sitting next to him waiting for the panel to start, because we were both just chilling out on the seats, and I was chilling out waiting for it to start, and he was chilling out waiting for it to start so that he can hop on stage. And so when it happened and it started up and things like that, they needed to find something to talk about and stuff. And so at one point, Greg and Tim pointed to me, and they said that this guy, bring him up on stage, we love the story. And so they brought me up on stage to sit in the guest chair and tell my story of how they inspired me to create and to make a podcast. And then that inspiration and that podcast got me to meet some of my biggest heroes. They love that story so much that they brought me on stage. It was amazing, and I was just chilling out on stage. There's no video just yet of that. I will probably link it in the description as soon as there is. I don't, because they did have, Rooster Teeth were filming those mini panels, so it should be up at some point. So yeah, they brought me up on stage, and I told the story, and they continued talking and things like that. And then I got booted off when they wanted to bring someone else up, in the nicest way possible. When I say booted off, I mean just seriously, really nice. So that was that, and I was freaking out. My parents didn't see it because they were in line, but when they showed up, my brother ran around and told them that I was brought up on stage, and so that was a ton of fun. And then the panel went on, and they would continue talking and stuff like that. And then towards the end of the panel, that's not straight. Towards the end of the panel, they were plugging their shirts, and he pointed to Greg, stood up and pointed to me. He said, "You, do you have a shirt?" And I said, "No, not yet." And then so he got out his wallet. Okay, took out $20, handed it to me, and said, "Go get a shirt," and pointed at the desk where you could buy the merchandise. And I said, all right, I'll do that right after this. And so, because I was going to sit down and finish watching the show. And he said, "No, right now." And I said, okay. And so I got up and I walked over to the merch store, wading through waves of people. And the people that were next to me on the line were freaking out and stuff. And so I went and I bought my Kind of Funny bridge shirt using Greg's money that he gave me. And I bought it and I brought it back. Now, probably the craziest thing is that while I was gone, he pointed to my brother, Zach, and said, "You come up here." And he was like, no. And he just wouldn't get up on the stage. And then Greg just said, "You don't get a say in the matter." And just brought him up on stage and sat him down. And they started talking about New Zealand, which I could hear from over in the line. And he was making fun of New Zealand because that's what the Kind of Funny guys do. They make fun of other countries and stuff like that and how America has more freedom and stuff. And it was really funny. He was having a bit of banter with my 14-year-old brother. Now talking about how we have koalas on our money and stuff. And Greg asked him what it's like living in a country with less freedom than America, or something to that effect. And Zach said that New Zealand actually has more freedom than America. And so Greg posed the question to Colin, and Colin said, "Oh, well, there is a freedom index, but I haven't looked at it recently, so I wouldn't know." And then eventually Zach got booed off again when they had to wrap it up, and I brought the shirt back and I showed it to him, and it was amazing. And my mum came up and thanked him, and he said thanks for being great sports to us, he being Greg. And then we kind of went away. They had to go off. They had to run along and do other panels and stuff like that. I managed to speak to Colin briefly afterwards as well, which was really great to talk to him. And so that was the whole Kind of Funny thing. Then there was the cosplay meetup, Assassin's Creed cosplay meetup, which was a ton of fun. I'm going to show some pictures of that in just a second. And I was talking with, it was great talking to Gabe and Andy. I met Justin for the first time, which was amazing. I met some other of the Rainbow Six team, which was great to meet those guys. Andrew was there. Can't pronounce his last name, but he's there. He's the AC. I think he's the Montreal camera guy and does lots of video stuff and stuff like that. And I was talking to him at that cosplay meetup, which was really cool.